Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakal Pradash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to explain where skin color comes from, right? But before we get into that, let's read this. This is Isaiah 25:7. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. Now, what is this talking about? This scripture here is talking about how the Lord would ultimately reveal who everybody on the earth's true identity is according to the Bible, right? The table of nations, which are found in Genesis 10, reveals that there's basically 18 nations upon the earth which the Lord recognizes, right? So out of the 195 nations which the UN recognizes upon the earth today, all those go back to 18 biblical nations, okay? Now, these biblical nations, in the beginning, they were all nations of color, right? Pretty much everybody was a so-called black man, right? Or a black woman, right? Everybody had darker shades of skin color. And why is this? Because we all come from Adam and Eve, right? The people of this generation of humanity, right? Or this, we all come from that lineage of Adam, right? There's nobody on earth today that comes from anybody else other than from Adam and Eve, okay? And they were people of color. Now, that being said, where does the white skin tone come from? Right? Where do you see that from? Well, in today's, it predominantly comes from the Caucasian race, right? Or the nation referred to as Edom. Biblically, let's go ahead and explain it. But first, let's watch this bozo here. His name's Bill Nye, and I'm sure a lot of you people know him. But he recently had a post on Reddit. It says, Bill Nye breaks down the science of skin color and shows why racism is ridiculous. Now, before we watch this, let me explain to you why racism is a bad word, right? Because you see, there's nothing wrong with racism. There's nothing wrong with being for your race, right? The Chinese should be down for the Chinese. The so-called Negroes should be down for the so-called Negroes. The white people should be down for the white people, and so on, right? There's nothing wrong with being for your kind. Now, that being said, the reason why race is considered such a hot topic issue, right? Why it's been considered such a bad word is because, you see, to understand race and nationality or genealogy is to understand what's really going on here in the earth. Who is who, and ultimately finding out your true identity. Right? So just like that scripture I read in Isaiah, the Lord right now is causing the Spirit to reveal who the 18 nations upon the earth are. Okay, if you are upon this earth today, you belong to one of these 18 nations described in the Bible. Now, so that being said, the people who run this world, the so-called Caucasian race, the Edomites, they have a vested interest to hide themselves amongst the people of the world, right? To create all these additional races, just to use race as a bad term, because they do not want to be discovered, right? And why is that? Well, because when you find out who they are tied to in the Bible, then you'll understand why they're trying to hide, why are they acting like fugitives and vagabonds upon the earth. Well, let's go and listen to this fool's explanation.
Map of the continents of the Earth showing how much ultraviolet light lands in each latitude. It turns out the closer you are to the equator, the more intense the ultraviolet. We use reds and purples. But then as you move away from the equator, we change the colors to orange, yellow, greens, and grays. Now here's the same map of the same continent with just one color. And it turns out that everybody on Earth is descended from people that live here in Africa. And then as groups of us moved around the world, the color of our skin had to change. And here's why. Our skin is where we make vitamin D. If you don't get enough ultraviolet, you don't get enough vitamin D. But if you get too much ultraviolet, then you break down your folates. You have to have it in perfect balance. And because the ultraviolet varies, the color of our skin varies. And that's it, everybody. That's why we have different colored skin. But we're all one species. But we're not treating each other fairly. Not everybody's getting an even shake. So it's time to change things.
So you see, Bill Nye trying to explain where his white skin comes from, right? Now, if you don't know about Bill Nye, a lot of people are under the false impression that he is a man of science. No, he, at one point, he was a scientist, but for the most part, he's a political shill now, right? He now pushes that gender is not tied to anything on your body, right? That there's no such thing as a gender, right? And why is that? Well, because he's a sellout, right? He is a lab suit for the elitist, right? To push out false facts so that way the people can believe the lies that are being pushed out, right? Back in the 90s, what did he say here? Gender is determined by your chromosome. There's videos of him coming out here showing that there's only two genders out there, and which is contrary to what this devil says now. And the thing is this guy here can't be believed. Now, why is that? Well, let's go ahead and explain, right? If we were to use his logic, right, then why do the Eskimos, who are at the very top, right, the furthest away from the equator, why are they dark skinned? Why do they have such dark hued skin? Well, I don't know. Bill Nye says that the further you are away from the equator, the less melanin you should have. Well, these devils, their lies don't add up, right? And this also goes for like the Russians that are at the top and of like by Siberia, Well, the thing is that when you really look into it, skin color ultimately goes back to a curse, right? A curse that the Lord put upon a particular person in the Bible, right? Because we've got to remember, let's actually go to the Bible timeline for this. Right, when you look into the Bible timeline, right, you have the very beginning, right? Earth was created, right? You had the Adamites, which were like the people that the Lord created upon earth, and the Lord caused destruction to basically bring those people down. Then you had a comet collision, which if you want to look into it, you can look at the Hiawatha crater in Greenland that was just discovered a few years ago, right? You can see the big old crater that caused the meltwaters that were above North America to come down into the continent and create the Michigan lakes and all these landscape things. But that ultimately created the Ice Age, and from the Ice Age, the people who survived that cataclysmic destruction of the worldwide civilization comes Adam and Eve. And again, Adam and Eve were people of color. Okay, they were the people that the Lord chose to restart humanity on. Right now, here's the point: Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. All right, and we all know the story how Cain killed Abel. And what did the Lord do to Cain because of this? Well, let's read about it. Genesis 4:15. And Yahweh Bashem Shai said unto him, Therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And Yahweh Bashem Shai set a mark upon Cain lest any find him should kill him. Okay, what is this mark? Right? Did the Lord put a little X on his skin? No. The Lord created leprosy on Cain. Right? He took his melanin, right? Because up until that point, the Lord had only created so-called black people. Okay, but when he marked Cain, he removed Cain's melanin and made him an albino, like these people that you see here. This man here on the left, right, or kid, he is what you would call a Negroid albino, right? This man here on the right would be a Caucasoid or Caucasian albino, right? Basically, not only does he come from a lineage which does not have melanin, but he comes from a particular lineage who have been breeding within that race over and over again to get these particular features, right? The blonde hair, blue eyes, and so forth, okay? Now, let's go ahead and read a scripture that shows that the Lord actually marked somebody else with this particular mark before, okay? This can be found in Numbers 12 and 10. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, actually, let's start off here at verse 7. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yahweh Bashem Ashai shall be behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of Yahweh Bashem Ashai was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud, which is really a UFO, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam, Moses' sister, became leprous, white as snow. White as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Okay? So this is a form of being marked, right? Leprosy. This is what clean leprosy looks like, right? There is a form of disease leprosy, which is what this is, right? This is a diseased leper, right? Where your skin is just rotting off of you and everything, right? But this is a form of clean leprosy, where you have no melanin in your body. And this ultimately is what Esau was, man. Pretty much just like this. And his forefather, Cain, which is basically Esau in the reincarnation, right? Because again, when Cain came, he died in the flood, right? But his spirit came back as Esau, right? That was Cain coming back in the reincarnation, okay? And that's why he still had that mark upon him, right? Which is why when he came out, let's read it. This is Genesis 25 and 25. When Cain comes back in the reincarnation through Esau, right? The firstborn of Isaac and Rebekah, okay? Let's read this. This is Genesis 25 and 25. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. Okay? So this is Cain coming back in the reincarnation, who still had that spiritual mark on him. And why is that? Well, because the Lord marked Cain. But in this case here, we know this was Cain. And hence Cain came back with that mark in the reincarnation as Esau. Right? And when it says he came out red, this is what it looks. This is what he looked like, man. This is a Caucasian baby. This is an Edomite baby, man. Right, looking all red. And why is that? Because his blood is showing through his skin. And check that shit out, man. He's starting up the devil horns. Just playing. But the point being is that this is what Esau looked like, okay? And ultimately, this is the reason why he looked like this is because he had no melanin in his body. This is why his eyes were blue. His hair was blonde. His skin was, once the blood receded, it was white, right? Or so-called pinkish, okay? And the reason is because he had received that mark from the Lord. Just like, when you look at Caucasians today, all of them have that mark upon them, man. Right? They are the people of the Lord's curse. And this is pretty much what Esau looked upon, amongst all the other Israelites, man. Right? A so-called white child amongst other so-called Negroes, man. Because this is basically the way it works. Now, this child here, let's say he was Esau, right? He eventually would marry somebody, right? He would have a child with one of the normal skinned people in the world. And what would happen? Well, the children would come out with genes, recessive genes that Esau would pass on. One of those being a lighter skin tone, okay? And this is why when you see a Caucasian with a so-called Negro or Latino, the children come out lighter skinned, right? They may not be as white as the Caucasian parent, but they are a lighter tone than the darker tone of their family, in most cases, right? Well, this is how there's different skin colors in the world, right? It's not to do with your place, your geographical place on the earth, man. The whole reason, because if that's the truth, then how did these Caucasians who are white, right? How did they turn white if everybody came out of Africa, which they did not, because everybody came out of basically the land of Israel, right? Which was the land of Eden, which is where Adam and Eve came out of, man. That's the place where we all came out of, man, right? Why is it that if the Caucasian race had turned white, why didn't the rest of the people turn white that went up there, right? The Eskimos, the other darker nations, the original Greeks, right? The original Italians, the Kittams, right? Why didn't they turn? Well, it's because that whole explanation is a bunch of lies. And why is that? And why is this being revealed now? Well, it tells you here in Jeremiah 49:10. But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. You see, the whole explanation and the time for trying to explain, leprosy, biblical leprosy, is over, right? When you see a so-called white person, their skin color is a result of them having no melanin, okay? When you look at, like, for example, me, I'm a lighter skinned Latino, right? My genes have basically been influenced by the conquerors of my family's bloodline, okay? I have received, right, from my immediate father, my grandpa, my recent ancestors, we've received that lighter skin tone, man, because it's a curse, right? Our people were conquered and destroyed, right? Just like the rest of the other people of the world. This is why you have, again, if you're not Caucasian in this world, right? Let's say you're Asian, Chinese, you're Arab, right? Your light skin comes from infiltration of an Edomite that had basically mixed with your ancestors, man. Right? This is the way it works, right? When you read, I think it's in 2 Kings, about how the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, how we would, hook up with other nations, surrounding nations around us. We had this ultimately also resulted in us losing our pigmentation, losing that melanin that we originally had, right? This also goes back to Genesis 6, right? Where we were in that fallen state, that we bore children with the children of men, right? Because we didn't stick to ourselves. And this ultimately is how skin color truly came upon the earth, the different variations that there are today. It doesn't have to do with your geographical location. It has to do with your biblical lineage, okay? Plain and simple, right? So hopefully this video was edifying. Until next time, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Ruach Kodash. The honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.